Nobody likes to talk about death. And we almost have this magical thinking if we don't talk about it, that it won't happen.
Mhm.
But the reality is that it is the single thing that binds all of us as human beings. We're all going to die with 100% certainty. And we're really not prepared to die usually, and certainly not for the silver tsunami.
Hello there, and welcome back to the Family Wealth Edge. Vincent, today we've got a tough topic, but a good topic, and I think we've found the best guest speaker that we could possibly bring in on a topic that we both know well, caregiving for and preparing for the death of loved ones, which is a toughie. And I'm
It
super
is.
excited to share Robin Norcross with our audience. She's wonderful. I met her through the Purposeful Planning Institute. And Vincent, when I met her, I was like, this woman is so special. Her background is perfect for the work that she does. And I just can't wait to share her with you and with the audience.
Oh, thanks, Kristen. Robin, looking forward to hearing more about your story and the work that you do for families.
Tell us about
Well,
it, Robin. Dive right in.
thank you both. I think I've always been interested in death and what really happens when we die. And then my work as a hospital chaplain, that was a lot of what I dealt with day to day was death. Um, and then a few years ago, I started, these articles kept coming to me about how this was the greatest generational transfer of wealth. And I thought, well, what am I supposed to do with with this?
Yeah.
I'm, not really in the philanthropy or family office space. And then it hit me. Well, if this is the greatest generational transfer of wealth, that means a lot of people are going to be dying.
Mm.
And so researching it, yes, the baby boomers, 73 million of us. And it's called the silver tsunami. And over the next 20 to 30 years, more people will die than ever before. And it will, I think, dramatically impact how we live.
Yeah.
And what does that translate to? Like when I hear you talk about it, it's so far reaching when you actually think about how does that impact us in our world?
Yeah. So every day, 10,000 people celebrate their 65th birthday.
Wow.
10,000 people a day turn 65. By 2030, 20% of us will be over 65 or older. And by 2034, there will be more people over 65 than there are children.
Wow. That's a
Wow.
global statistic, Robin?
Yes. So, you know, basically looking at the US,
Yeah.
though, because this was where the predominance of growth in that generation happened.
Mm.
That makes sense. And how does that translate then as we think about the capacity that we have to care for an aging population?
So just imagine that in the peak of this, predicted to be between 2037 and 2044, every every person will know 1 to 2 people a day that die.
Hmm.
Whoa, that's wild to think about.
Yeah. And
Hmm.
then extrapolate that out. Okay, that means you'll know 1 to 2 people, your spouse will know 1 to 2 people,
Hmm.
your colleagues will know. So it's going to be a phenomenon that we've never really experienced before, and it will certainly put a strain on our our health institutions, our religious institutions, our legal system.
Yeah. Relationships across the
Mm.
board.
Definitely relationships.
I'm curious, Robin, to hear more about. So you were a hospital chaplain.
I was a hospital chaplain for about 10 years.
The news were inundated with this, the greatest wealth transfer of all time. We've been hearing it for a long time. To your point, right? Money is moving. And I love the way
Mhm.
you said it. You go, okay, if money is moving, that means people are passing. What
Mhm.
so what was that aha moment for you going from hospital chaplain to realizing that money is moving to, hey, I can be useful and helpful in this space in creating your company and being of service?
Yeah. Well, nobody likes to talk about death. And we almost have this magical thinking if we don't talk about it, that it won't happen.
Mm.
Mm.
But the reality is that it is the single thing that binds all of us as human beings. We're all going to die with 100%
Certainly.
certainty.
Yeah.
and we're really not prepared uh, to die usually, and certainly not for the silver tsunami. We're going to be forced to talk about it. And my hope is that we can talk about it before we're in the thick of it and really start to think about what do I want my death to look like?
Mm.
What are my options? Do I have options? And and start to plan towards what a good death looks like. You both mentioned that you've helped parents make that transition, and most of us have, and most of us would say, "Gosh, I don't want to do it that way," or "I want to be more prepared in A, B, C, or D."
Hmm.
Um, and so I think that's the opportunity that is about to become available to all of us through this experience of the silver tsunami. We have to think about it. We're
Yeah.
going to have to plan, or
Well, Robin, you say people don't like to talk about it. You must have some magic way of helping people get comfortable to have those conversations. So, can you talk us through that? What does that take?
in my experience, it's pretty easy. Once you get people to start to talk about it, and my leading question is, what's your first memory of death?
Mm.
And for most people, it's a grandparent, a pet. Um, and then really it's pretty easy from there. It's just the thought of talking about it that I think gets people really stuck. But once you start having a conversation, um, it's something that we all have experience with, and we just haven't had the opportunity to really process it.
Yeah. It's empowering the way you're describing it, right? I think, as you said, death is a certainty. A lot of people avoid it with the conversation about what can we do? How can we make this better? And to your point, Robin, we have the power or the ability to make it better. I think that's one of the things where Chris and I talk about family wealth, like helping. And I know you mentioned, my father passing and Kristen's parents passing, and both of us being very involved in that process. I would say that it was the greatest honor for me to help dad pass with dignity. The estate plan was a bit complex, but we got through it. And I think that I use simple sayings like leave the jersey in a better place. So you as mom or dad or grandparent, why wouldn't you want your death to be smoother and talked about and prepared for, uh, so that the family that's left behind remains intact? It's as ugly as it can be sometimes, it is a positive experience of celebrating one's life. And as we all know, the show goes on. I think that's what we forget, right? Like tomorrow's going to come for the ones that are left behind. How do we want to continue? Talk a little bit more about that, your experience with some of these families, maybe some things that you've seen go really well, families that do things differently to help people transition thoughtfully.
So, just by definition, a good death is one in which there's limited or no suffering.
Mm.
The person's wishes are taken into consideration as much as possible. Um, oh, I don't know, I've just lost the third part of it.
Yeah.
Oh, and that they die with a sense of peace,
Mm.
and those around them with a sense of peace. If you've ever been present when someone takes their last breath, it's a pretty profound experience,
Mhm.
and pretty indescribable, and one that you're glad you were there for.
You
I did it.
absolutely.
I've done it 3 times
Yeah.
with 3 out of the
Mhm.
4 parents between my husband and I would never have guessed that. I think I don't know, part of this I think is people fear the anticipation of these moments because you think like, how will I ever be able to handle losing my parents or, whatever caregiving requires, those difficult decisions. But I think when you're anticipating it 10 years before it happens, you don't really have the like gumption that you'll have in the moment to get through it, and you also don't anticipate all of the beautiful moments that are happening of connection that are happening around it. I think especially when you've done some of the work prior and have had some of those conversations
Yes,
to help ease the struggle of some of it.
exactly. And I find especially with men, who have been used to having the illusion of control
Mm.
for most of their life,
Yeah.
um, if they are beset with a terminal diagnosis, um, they have they have no framework. Their illusion of control is suddenly just that. It's been an illusion.
So what do
But
you
there
do with
are
that, Robin? When you're like meeting with a person who's that way, how do you help them move
well, I
into these
help them to
conversations?
realize there's a lot of things they are in control of. There are a lot
Mm.
of things. What do they want? What's important to them? And especially some of the softer social emotional things. What conversations have they not had that they need to have? What amends need to be made? Um, what you know? What what positive things about their spouse, their children, have they not communicated?
Mhm.
And really and truly, these are things that we should all be doing as if we're going to die tomorrow,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
Mhm.
We just put them off as if time is endless. And I think with the silver tsunami, what we're going to realize is that what is most important is the present moment.
Yeah.
And those we don't put those conversations off. We have them.
It's
And
sorry, go ahead, Robin.
no, and it just we live more in the present. And
It
that's really the most impactful place to live.
I know for me, it's like when it's almost like an awakening when you realize and accept that life is finite. Like, I remember there was a book written decades ago, "Don't Sweat the Small Stuff." But
Mhm.
yeah, no kidding. And
Mhm.
I wanna take you back to the comment you made about being there for someone's last breath. I had that I had the honor, it really is an honor to actually be there with my father for him to pass peacefully. There was 12 of us in the room. I know it's a funny number in the religious sense, but it just happened to be 12 of us in the room,
Mhm. Wow.
and he passed peacefully, right? And I was amongst my sister, my cousin, my uncle, all of his closest people, and we were all there, and then he suffered, like, he had a terminal illness like you described, and it's interesting the emotions that you go through. I know for me, it was a part of it was, um I felt guilty because I wanted him to hang on longer so I could have more time with him, but then at the same token, the pain that they're in, so you're like, you almost want them to pass. It's this weird
Conflicted.
place you
Yeah.
find yourself in, and then amongst all of that, because of the work that we do, the gift that we've been given, Kristen and I and yourself, Robin, and actually sitting with people to help them think through, like, what do you want? Why is that important?
Mhm.
The aftermath for me was the most significant aha. Like some of the relationships you thought or hoped would stay intact never did. And so it's like this real, what can I be doing better today while I'm alive to really reinforce with the people I care about most so that, like in our dad was the glue. Everybody
Mhm.
likes to see dad, right? And then when that glue is no longer there, it's how do you stay in connection? I'm rambling because I think so many emotions come out of this and we neglect it. And to not prepare for it, it almost feels I've been going through it. It feels silly not to
Mhm.
sit down and talk about, okay, we spend all this time on the estate side. This is what happens when you die. There's a disposition, taxes, who gets what, the wills are read. And then yet there's the whole human component that are left to deal with it. Just curious to hear more of your thoughts about what you're experiencing in the work.
Yeah, and wouldn't you say that, from a family wealth perspective, you do spend so much time on that piece of it, and really and truly, the legacy that's most important is the relational one.
Mhm.
Always,
Mhm.
Always.
And it might
always.
even inform the other side of it. I went to a conference several years back where we were guided through it was on the topic of transitions, and so one of the transitions was your own mortality, and so we were guided through this, like, meditative process to think through the moment of your death, like, imagine the moment of your death, and, like, look into the faces of your family members, and, of course, it was emotional, but what I
Mhm.
remember thinking that was so insightful to me was that it would really free me up if I could look into their faces and know that they were prepared to live life without me. That, like, what I didn't wanna look into their eyes and see was that, like, they were panicked going, oh my gosh, I don't know if I'm going to be able to like get by in the business realm, the family wealth realm without my mom, in whatever, just getting through life, like your own coping skills. I mean, it's always hard to lose a loved one, but it made me realize it's very important for me and how I prepare them as human beings, as stewards of wealth, so that they will handle that moment and just be like, I'm going to miss my mom versus I'm not capable of moving through my life roles. And so for me, that was really useful. And it was not what I expected to have as an insight from that. So it is those conversations that have nothing to do with the technical, really, that maybe are most important.
They are. They are, and it's almost, would you rather be hit by a bus or be diagnosed with a terminal illness? I mean, you know, if it's a sudden death, then things may be left unsaid. If
Mhm.
it's a lingering death, then you have the luxury of time to do and say the things that, um, are important to be said.
Yeah.
Well, that makes me think of caregiving, Robin, and I wanted to spend a little bit of time hearing from you on that because if the silver tsunami is as you describe, and two people a day you're going to know die, that's every day. But prior to that, for many people who do have a chronic disease, terminal illness, there's also caregiving needs required, and maybe we're as a society maybe under capacity on the ability to do that. I found caregiving for my mom who had Alzheimer's to be the most difficult thing that I had ever done, because nobody trains you for it. You just like got to roll up your sleeves and it needs to be done. So what, if anything, do you do to help people prepare for those moments? And like as a society, can we be doing to move in that direction?
Well, I think that will be our greatest challenge. Um, Very few good deaths happen in a hospital, and
Mm,
really and truly, that's not what a hospital is for. A hospital is to help people heal,
yeah.
that are gonna heal. So I think we're gonna see, some innovation, hopefully, in how we see the dying process. Medical aid in dying is something that, is, legal in 11 states in the District of Columbia, proposed in 11, 12 more. Um, and I think things like this, people will start looking to. I have a terminal diagnosis. Do I want to spend the end of my life not at my capacity and expending a tremendous amount of money
Mhm.
um, to delay the inevitable?
Mhm.
Um, or do I want to maybe choose to have a peaceful death? It's not the right decision for everyone, but I'm really surprised at how few people know that it's an option.
But this is a big topic up here in Canada as we
Yes,
with our MAID program, it's a tough conversation either way. But to your point, we're all connected, and I think it's if I have a terminal illness, the money, the impact, the stress for my loved ones. Kristen talked about her mom. We were very close back then, and I remember it was during the
Mhm.
whole world during COVID times, and mom would come on camera, and it was a tough time to see
It
your
was.
friend go through this. And I think it's again, I part of our thinking with this podcast was to help bring these conversations to the forefront, and you're doing that, Robin.
Mhm.
Um, so we thank you for that. Ideas or suggestions? Are there like, I hate the word best practices, but some
Yeah. What
suggest.
should people be talking about? Yeah. As a
well,
family.
they just need to start talking about it. And, sometimes, if you have the experience of having somebody that that dies suddenly and how jarring it is, and you feel like this, okay, I've got to do this, and gosh, I'm going to take that trip that I've been putting off, or I'm going to have that ice cream after dinner after all. You just start thinking, okay, well, I'm not going to be here forever. So I find that around things like that, it's a good time to say, gosh, you know, to whoever the people are that are going to be helping you, your children, your spouse. Um, and by the way, a spouse or a child is not always the best person to carry out your final
Mm,
wishes. Sometimes it's a real burden. And I sometimes recommend that people find somebody that is not related to them, that they know they can trust with being uh, the person that says, no, this is what he or she really wanted, and this is what we're going to do.
Mm.
Um, but just to make those plans and have those conversations. Um, what was what was a what was good about someone that you knew knows death? What was not so good? What do you want not to happen? Um, but it's mostly the conversations. It's just having the conversation. Even with kids, um, I would say, the more that we can help normalize death, it's going to happen to everybody. There's some great books for small children, but just having those conversations with, I would say, anyone, 8 and up when that happens, just to be very factual. Their body no longer worked. And then sometimes children have really interesting ideas about, well, what happened next?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we've all had that dream
Yeah.
where someone that's deceased comes to us and it's more real than a dream.
Mhm.
Well, what's that all about? Maybe our connection to those who pass is really stronger than we currently understand or want to understand.
Yeah. It's what's coming up for me is as you're describing the little kids. So I have 2 boys. I think I shared that with you, Robin, earlier. The one is homesick today, and I have a little one who's 5. So when dad passed 3 years ago, he was 2. And yes, they met, and of course, he doesn't remember my dad, but the most questions comes from him.
Mhm.
Which is like Angela, my wife, and I always go like, "Is he being?" It's like, "Is he being guided here?" Like he'll be like, "Tell me more about Nono Vince. What was Nono?" And I'm like,
Mhm.
"You? How do you?" Where my oldest one, Leo, remembers him.
Mhm.
Doesn't He's not as inquisitive, but the little one, it's almost weekly, where he'll ask me a question. He'll say stuff like, "Nono Vince was a good guy, right?" And I'll be like, "Yes, he was." Where are they
Mhm.
getting it from? To your point, Robin,
Yeah.
it's a remarkable. I go back to what I was saying earlier, how connected we all are. And I think that one of the things I've learned so much from this call in 20 minutes. Like I'm thinking of one family I'm working with now where the dad is older, like he's in his early 70s, and he's thinking through about how am I going to transition my business and I'm thinking like, yes, and what is your next great adventure? Like what do you want to see happen next for you? And how do you want to spend these days and really help this dad and business owner have the conversations with his family because it is inevitable. And I think that part of your work in championing this conversation is the key to a successful estate plan. It's
Yeah.
almost mandatory. We got to
Yeah.
talk about what happens next.
Well,
And probably, Robin, it's better when you're doing it in advance, I imagine, right? When you can do this in a way that's proactive and thoughtful and emotions not running high.
just having the conversation dispels so much fear.
Mm.
Mm.
So much fear. It sounds so simple, but it's truly profound
Yeah.
because we don't talk about it. And my hope is that as death becomes, um, you know, so prevalent in our everyday world, it's just going to be the background hum of our existence
Yeah.
for 20 years. That collectively will kind of make a breakthrough that death is
Mhm.
just part of life,
Yeah.
Mm.
and it's not to be feared.
Yeah.
It's to be, you know, it's a profound experience.
Yeah.
But it's important that we understand how we would like for it to be for us, and that we share that with our loved ones so that they can help us to make that happen.
Well, that's beautiful. Thank you for inviting us to do a better job of embracing death and planning for a good death. It's not an easy conversation, but you make it easy. So we appreciate that, Robin. Will you tell people how they can find you if they want to continue this conversation?
Yes, my website is Purposeful Passages, because this is a collective endeavor.
Mm.
Uh, and uh, they can reach me via email or text or however they would like to reach out. But I love having these conversations. I think they're important. And I so appreciate you all being willing to begin that conversation.
Of course. Well,
Thank
you've
you,
made us
Rob.
courageous, so we appreciate it. Thanks for
Thank you.
joining us today, Robin.
We'll put your information in the call notes. Thanks everybody for listening. This is another episode of the Family Wealth Edge.